Hello and welcome to the first in a series of development videos covering the new event management system, which forms part of SMS. I'm Andy Bracegirdle, the lead BARDA developer, and in this particular video we'll be looking at the My Events page, covering what it does and how it links in with the work being done in Cadet Portal. Naturally, this is a development build and is subject to change, so some elements may appear differently in the initial release. The My Events page will display events your unit has created, your unit has been invited to, or those you as an individual have been invited to. The first thing I'm sure you've noticed is how different this looks to the current version of SMS. SMS looked dated, how it presented information wasn't always easy to understand, and there was a lot of terminology that had little in the way of explanation, which is something we hope to address. We'll start at the top of the page and we'll look at the breadcrumb, which can be seen here. Now, we've introduced the breadcrumb to enable you to easily and consistently navigate back from pages that you've been viewing. I'm sure most of you will be familiar with how a breadcrumb works, but SMS didn't have one, which made it particularly difficult when you were navigating into the deeper parts of SMS, and then you'd end up resorting to using the main menu to get you take you all the way back to the start, which was less than ideal. And this is going to be a consistent feature throughout the system. Another consistent feature will be the ability to filter. So we have our events filter here, and we have some default values that we've already got set, which will be set when the page loads. So we have our date from, which is set to 6 months in the past from today, and our date to, which will be set from 6 months in the future from today. We also have our My Units and other units checked, so this means that we'll see events that your unit has created and events that your unit has been invited to. We have the statuses, draft, approved and awaiting approval, checked by default. So again, you will see events that are in those three stages. We chose to hide complete by default, predominantly because it will create a lot of clutter, and typically you're only interested in completed events when you need to carry out a certain piece of work. You're not typically interested in seeing them day to day. And a more standard filter option that we have here is search. So if I typed in walking, I would see events that had walking in the title or walking in the description. Alternatively, I could search on reference. So I would find the event that has this reference number, and then that will take me straight to that event. Some of the less typical filters, and certainly new to this version of SMS, the ability to filter on event issues. So we can highlight events that have, say, a missing or a staff member that doesn't have a DBS that covers the duration of the event. So we can see we conveniently have one here. So on our staff walking day, we have a member of staff that doesn't have a DBS that covers the duration of this event, and that's indicated by this little red label and this icon highlighting the issue. If we ticked that box and click filtered, we'd get all our events that meet the criteria already set here and here, that have staff members that are missing DBSs. We also have the ability to highlight events that are missing risk assessments, events that have a staff to cadet ratio that's outside the acceptable level, and events that are overdue and require completion. We can filter on event type, so if I'm only interested in AT, I can select AT, click filter, and I'll get all the AT events. We have the ability to highlight events that I am the adult IC of or that I'm attending. So I'm just going to go ahead and click attending here. I will click filter. I get a nice little loading icon, which indicates that SMS is doing something, which we've typically lacked in the previous versions, which can be quite frustrating when you sat there. You click filter and you wait for SMS to do something, only for it to sit there staring blankly back at you. And eventually it suddenly pings to life and something changes. So we've addressed that issue. We can see here I've got two events, both of which I am glued down as attending. I click clear filter, and again we get the little loading screen, and I'm back to my default page. Now, moving on from the filters, we can see our events are displayed in cards instead of a table. We chose to just use cards over tables because we can get more information in a card in a much clearer manner. So looking at our cards, they are divided into calendar month and year. So we can see here we have one event in October 2018. Two events in November 2018, and somewhere down there we've got more events in December 2018. Now this can become quite scrolly if you've got a lot of events over a large period of time. So we've introduced a sticky sort of date navigator. So if, let's say I've logged on and I need to do some work on an event that's taking place in May 2019. So I can log in, click on my events in the main menu, and then I come here and instead of scrolling all the way to the bottom, I can click May 2019, and there is my event. And I can click back up to October, and that'll take me straight back up to the top, so I can carry on working as I was. And I think that should hopefully put to rest any fears over scrolling, the system becoming very, very scrolly and unwieldy to use. Looking at the event cards themselves, as I sort of touched on briefly earlier, they're grouped by calendar month and year. So we can see we have one in October. Now we can see it's taking place on the 17th of October, which is the big date there. So 17th of October 18. We have our event title. And next to our event title, we have a copy the event link button. Now clicking that will give us a nice little feedback message here that says the event has been copied to the clipboard. Now once it's copied to the clipboard, you're free to paste it wherever you like, be that in an email or joining instructions or wherever. What that means is that a member of staff can then use that link that you've sent them, or they've accessed through a document, click on it and it will take them into SMS, and it will take them straight to the event. So straight away they'll be in the event that they need to have a look at because, whatever reason, instead of perhaps you sending them an email saying, can you please log into SMS, can you please go to your activities page, and can you please find this event called this? It's a lot easier, it's a lot more concise, and it'll be the same for any emails that come out of SMS. So when SMS sends you an email saying something has happened to your event's been approved, for instance, you will get a direct link to that event, instead of your event has been approved, now please, log into SMS and find it to have a look at it. Below the title, we have our originating unit. So in this case, because I'm on Sleaford, the originating unit is Sleaford. Now that could be your squadron, and it more than likely will be your squadron. It could also be another squadron or a wing or a region if you've been invited to that event. On the right hand side, we can see we've got a ribbon here, which is our green ribbon, and then stating the status of the event. So this event is approved by the Wing HQ. Now, this is what I mentioned earlier about having lots of terminology with a little explanation. And I'm sure there's a document floating around in SharePoint somewhere that tells you what approved Wing HQ means and what you can do to an event that has been approved by the Wing. But that means that 1, you need to know that document exists. 2, you need to know where it is, which isn't particularly user-friendly, certainly for a new user. You want to come on and go, oh, this event's been approved. What does that mean? That means this. And so SMS will tell you. And likewise, draft. It will tell you, and we've got the same for all of them, so whether it's pending, approved, completed, SMS will tell you what you can do with it and what you can't do with it, depending on those statuses. Below the status ribbon are the warnings. So in this event, we don't have a DBS that covers the duration. On this one, we have 5 members of staff, which is fairly atrocious, that don't have a DBS, and we also don't have a risk assessment. Now, the 5 members of staff, there's nothing to worry about. This is our test system, so it's full of dummy data and not a reflection at all on any squadron. So there's nothing to worry about there. Below our originating unit, we have the event type. So we have walking, which is what this event is. Its duration. So this is 6 days. So duration's a new thing. We didn't have duration before. We had a to and a from, and then you were kind of expected to work the rest of it out. So duration will show you how long this event is taking place for. So 6 days, we have a day here, another day there. If I scroll down a little bit, we go into hours. So we can say this air rifle range day will take 8 hours. We have an exercise green Eskimo, which will take 4 hours. So it should be a lot easier to make a decision, particularly if you're interested in joining an event. And it's the same in Cadet Portal, so cadets can see the duration and help plan better. Next to the duration, we have a reference. So the reference previously was generated at approval. We will generate references now on creation. So all events will have a reference on creation, which again, you can put in emails, you can put in documents, be they joining instructions or risk assessments, anything of the sort. So it's available straight away and helps identify that event, because identifying something by a name or by a type isn't ideal, and because you could quite easily end up with 2 events of the same name. So hopefully that'll make life a little bit easier. Next to the reference, we have a deadline date. Now, deadline date was asked for on social media as part of one of the responses to the cadet feedback video. So we've been fed that back by the volunteer development team. So we've put that on SMS. We have our deadline date here. And if I scroll down a little bit, this particular event, the deadline date is due in a few days. So we have a nice little yellow warning triangle with a calendar icon in it, highlighting that there's less than a week before the deadline date for this event closes. Now, deadline dates or returns due, as they were referred to in SMS, it didn't really serve a purpose as such. Whereas now there's a direct correlation between the deadline date and cadet's ability to register for an event. So once the deadline date passes, a cadet will no longer be able to register for an event without talking to a member of staff and asking that member of staff to register on their behalf. Moving on from that, so now we've touched on cadets registering for events. So we have two types of event. We have a bidding, which can be seen here. So this is a bidding event, and we can tell it's a bidding event because we have selected, reserves, and bids. The other type is an open event. So an open event, as soon as you put your name down, be you staff or cadet, you'll be flagged as attending. So if you have an open event that could be a Remembrance Day parade, for example, you want all of your cadets to attend. So you wouldn't make it a bidding event, you would leave it open, and all the cadets, as they put their names down to attend, will just be flagged as attending, and that will build your nominal roll for you. But at a glance, on your My Events page, you can see. So you can see day to day how this is changing. Going back to a bidding event slightly, we can see here we've got 5 out of 5 staff. So we've got 5 staff, as we can see on the tooltip, selected to attend. So 5 being the number of slots you have available. If we have a look at our Whitewater weekend, we can see we have 4 in bid for staff and 11 in bid for cadets and TBC in brackets. So TBC means spaces to be confirmed. We've chosen to do this because it gives you the option to either set the number of spaces prior to allowing cadets or staff, if it's a staff course, to place their bid, to apply to attend. Or alternatively, if you so wished, you could put the number of spaces. So if you knew for a fact my squadron has got 10 spaces for this Whitewater weekend, you could put in 10 spaces for this Whitewater weekend, and then that would be displayed there. But if you're not sure, so for example, you've got 5 squadrons attending a wing event, the wing are going to allocate spaces, but they're not going to do that until they know the level of interest each squadron has in attending that event. You would leave those number of spaces blank, and you would just gather your bids. Now, bids or spaces and reserves, and anyone else for that matter, can be quickly and easily seen from our event card. So I'm interested in my Whitewater weekend. Last time I logged in, for example, let's say there were 5 bids. There's now 11. I want to see who else has put their name down. So I can simply click on my little link, and now I've got a list of cadets. So I can now see all my cadets and their statuses. So at the moment, they're all bidding. If I was to go into my event and allocate some spaces, so I could go into my event, go onto the cadets tab, I could go onto my manage allocation. I could then select all the cadets I wanted to attend, mark them as selected. I could then put a few cadets in reserve, and poor old Bruce Banner down here, he never shows up to the squadron anyway, so I'm going to mark him as rejected and let him know that he isn't coming. And we can close that. So that pretty much covers the event cards. We have a little description at the bottom, which is to give a little bit of fluff, make it a little bit interesting. Sometimes titles you can't necessarily distinguish what it is from the title, so we thought we'd include the description here so we can see what's going on. And I think that pretty much covers the cards. Now, we do have the ability, which you can set in your own personal settings, which is something we'll cover later in another video, to show the events in a table. Because some of you, I respect, will prefer tables over cards. So we will set that as a setting, so you can opt into, or rather opt out, because cards will be by default, so you can opt out of using cards and use a table. So here's our table, and it will contain exactly the same information. So we've still got the ability to copy our links. So we can see here we've got our link down in the little message in the clipboard. We still have our statuses with the little tooltips. We still have our attending and our selected reserves and bid people, and we still have our issues, so we can highlight all the issues that this event has. So that pretty much covers everything that I would like to talk about today. I have included a contact us email address at within the description for this video. So if you do have any feedback, any suggestions, please don't hesitate to contact us. We're very, very much open to feedback, and it's probably the main driver for making SMS better, for improving what it does and how it can be done, is the feedback that you all give us. So thank you very much for listening and your time, and I look forward to reading all the feedback. Thank you. Goodbye.